Well, I worked here for 21 out of 30 years or something like that. The other rest of some of the addiction things, the adolescent clinic was at Cornell, but I was still working with Dole and Nicewander, so I really worked here for a long time in different capacities, different jobs. And I liked all of them. I really enjoyed my time here. Oh, I know what I should say a little bit about. The early days, when I first came to work here, they had a doctor's dining room, which was on the second floor or the first floor. And below that was the ladies' dining room. We called it the ladies' dining room. And it was meant to be for the technicians and secretaries. And they served us a hot lunch every day. And when I first started in '57, it was 10 cents a day for lunch. It went up a few months later to 25 cents a day, but we still. And if you didn't like what they were serving, you could always get scrambled eggs and mashed potatoes. And and then there was a group among them that always played bridge together. I never did because I didn't know how to play bridge. I still don't. But there was a group, Lila McGee and Mabel Bright and what was her name? I forget the names of the other people, but you know, every day at lunchtime they played bridge. But we were segregated. The women were not allowed to, although Becca Lansfield always ate in the doctor's dining room because she was a doctor, you know. And there was another woman whose name escapes me too. Perlman, Gertie Perlman. She was a doctor. They didn't have many women in the doctors, among the doctors. Brown came, and he had this idea, which is why he came and why they had him, you know, come, of setting up a university, graduate school. And he did, and he hired some people for that. And as a matter of fact, it was interesting in relation to Mac, because Mac was here, he was physician-in-chief of the hospital by then, and so I can't remember whether it was, the psychologist, I can't remember his name. But anyway, he wanted to be a vice president. And Brown said, I'm damned if I'm going to have him be a vice president over Mac. So he appointed Mac vice president as well as physician-in-chief. It was Carl somebody. He was here for a long time. I should know his name. I knew him very well. Brown, that was when Mac became vice president as well as physician-in-chief, as well as head of his laboratory. And of course he had a lot of outside activities, like he was president of the New York Heart Association for a few years. For many years, he was the head of the New York Health Research Institute and the Health Research Council of New York. He headed all those things, some of which he got by default because Lou Thomas would accept these positions, but then he wouldn't have time to carry them out, so he'd always get Mac to substitute for him. And then eventually Mac got to be appointed to these things. But so he was always very community-minded, a responsible citizen of the world, actually. He was involved in all of these kinds of activities that were very important. He was at one point chairman of his section at the National Academy. Anyway, the first year that they had graduation of that group, the hired help, like me, were all given 2 days off from work so that they could have appropriate celebrations without our interference. And it was great. I mean, I was delighted to have 2 days off. But we heard about how they served very elegant dinners and whatever. They had big ceremonies. And that's about the time when this concert started. Yeah, and I remember Teddy Shedlovsky, who was just the nicest fellow ever. And one night, we happened to be late in the dining room then, which was the dining room for the students. And we could go there at night for dinner, and we would have a nice, elegant dinner in which Alzada was the waitress. And we all knew each other, you know. It was very pleasant. It was pleasant and delicious meals. So for us, it was great because I never liked to cook, and we could just, you know, come. I was working at Cornell, and Matt was here. And, well, the food was, well, first of all, it was all on linen tablecloths with linen napkins, very elegantly served. And I'm sure Alzada must remember that, too. And it was extremely good food, and you had good choices. I mean, it was really, and it wasn't too expensive. It was the student meals, you know. But Teddy Shedlovsky was the one who started the concerts. And he knew music. Well, George does too. And he knew musicians. For example, we had the Guarneri Quartet every year. They came to play here. And my recollection, and I might be wrong in this, is that they didn't cost anything in the beginning. We didn't pay for them at all. They're not expensive now, but I don't remember that we paid for them. But we all were welcome to come. They didn't discriminate against us. I mean, hired help could come too, because at that point I was just hired help. It depends on what your priorities are. As far as the work was concerned, my best time was probably early on, you know, in the 60s, 57 to 67. But I really liked the evolution of, you know, lack of discrimination, which was always there. I mean, the higher groups were more privileged, but that gradually disappeared, and I can't decide really when that happened. I think it was a very gradual thing. And I remember how Mac was so pleased when he finally managed to convince them to give Rebecca a professorship. They wouldn't do it, and they said they wouldn't do it because she refused to do administrative work. And he said he was happy to do it for her. You know, the administrative part. He didn't mind doing it. But she was much too shy to do that. The other thing that I remember about Rebecca Lansfield was that later on, there were some of the women who wanted to organize the women. And Rebecca refused to have anything to do with them. She said, if I spend my time organizing the women, I won't have time to do my work, and it's more important to me to do my work. And she did. She never got involved with some of the younger women who thought they should have more privileges. She didn't. She wasn't interested in that at all. She was only interested in the types and what was going on with strep. She didn't care what was going on with the people.